which has been, warranted somewhat, but most of the time it's kind of been taken out of context with the responses that we've seen on Tanarr so far. A lot of time it is warranted though, so don't get too up and antsy about it. But basically, the fundamentals of lethal force are on the map screen. The police procedures, everyone should be reading those and keeping up to date because they do change, and they will probably be changing soon. But you can't just respond firstly on lethal. You need to actually have a normal response. You can't just go straight on lethal the very first response you do. As the rule states, usage of lethal force is only permitted for the protection of your life, another officer's life, or a civilian's life, and only if non-lethal force would not be effective. Just because you're being shot at doesn't mean you can't tase someone. If someone's 200 meters away from you, it doesn't mean that you need to use your 115 and instantly swap to the underbarrel lethal and kill someone. You can still tase them. At the end of the day, as an officer, your duty is to actually arrest people. Not everything needs to result in someone dying straight away. On top of this, just in general, people spraying their weapons around PDs or just doing dumb stuff, shooting other cops, it's not allowed. Same goes for just spamming the mortars or smoke screens from Striders or Ifrits. We'll begin removing vehicles. You'll have your rank removed if it's a common thing that you do.
User was moved to your channel.
It's just spam. You're not supposed to be utilizing those tools outside of combat. Especially with weapons, you shouldn't be shooting your own people or anything like that. It's dumb. Executing civilians, obviously not allowed.
User joined your channel.
The enemy of state civilians should only be warranted if they have, possibly already escaped
User joined
jail,
your channel.
or if you suspect you don't have the manpower for a potential jailbreak that will occur. So if you feel you can't defend jail, say, like, here's an example, let's say that, the whole of TF or SOV are on, and you send Versa to jail who has enemy of state, and all of SOV are already flying over to jail or something like that, you can execute them. But, don't prioritize executing people just because they're enemy of state. Still try to arrest them. On top of that, we'll move on to proper police tool usage. How many of you guys have used spike strips? Commonly, like on a day-to-day basis to stop people?
Me.
I do it all the time.
3 people so far out of, we have probably close to 100 people, or, 90-ish people whitelisted. So, it's not a very good ratio. The other day, on top of, combating GCUs, the other day, security team had one security guard drop a spike strip and disable a GCU.
User joined your channel.
It needs to be used. We don't give you spike strips so that you can just have them in your Y inventory and not use them. That also leads on to fuel darts as well. I know that when I'm up in a Pawnee or whatever, I don't really get fuel darted. Granted, when I'm strafing or when anyone is strafing, you shouldn't be peeking out for a fuel dart. Play strategic, wait for them to fly off if they're an armed air vehicle and fuel dart them then, when their back is to you. And if they start pulling up, like you can visibly see when someone is turning an armed air vehicle towards you, move back into cover. And cover being an actual solid building that is impenetrable, not like some little stone wall or a H barrier. It's not cover, you're gonna die. So play smart when you're using fuel darts against armed vehicles. A lot of cops do have fuel dart launchers, my man. A lot of cops should have fuel dart launchers. A lot of you guys are above senior constable. All of you guys should be using fuel dart launchers. If you're not using fuel dart launchers, we'll put you back down to a rank where you don't have them. If you don't want to use the tools we give you. We don't give you them to not use them. Been said multiple other times. So if you're sniping, so be it. Drop your fuel dart launcher or put it in your Strider or something, but you always should have one on you. You should never be without it. On top of that, I think this will lead on to Salami talking about response procedures in a second, but people have been responding constantly to like a bank or, you know, some close quarter combat area, say a fort, research, whatever, with Martens and Cyruses, just point blank with DMRs and marksman rifles. It's stupid. Those are the type of people where we notice that all they do is really lethal. So if you're going to be responding to anything that is close quarters, like fort, whatever, if you should never be thinking about going to snipe on your first response or any response for that fact. Sniping should only be a thing that happens when you know for a fact that you can't
User
make a
joined your
solid
channel.
push.
User
AKA when
joined
you've
your
already
channel.
attempted to make a push. And you do have a police locker for a reason. People seen using Martens or marksman rifles and DMRs in close quarter combat on a consistent basis will now be, they'll have that weapon restricted from them. You won't be allowed to use
User
it for a
joined your
certain
channel.
time. It becomes a habit. Like I said, with everything else, you'll be put back down to a rank where you don't get that weapon. There's been a few
User
people
left your
responding
channel.
with like M320s, Cyruses, etc. as their first
User
response.
joined your channel.
Not even as their first response, just in general, responding point blank with those weapons. It's stupid. You know, use the MXSW, 100 rounds. Use the AK-12, 30 round mag. The AK-12 is actually really, really powerful as well. It's good for lethals too if you need to swap in that combat situation. You can do it without needing to use a marksman rifle, which has like 10 bullets that you're probably going to miss. Things that people need to be thinking about, you know. You guys have a lot of LMGs and a lot of big round guns to use that you should be using when you're pushing something. Before I hand it off to Slimy, security guards. When you guys are requesting security guards, you need to actually describe what you're doing or what you want them for. If there's a bank going on, try give as much detail as you can. If there's a pawnee there, tell the security guards there's a pawnee there. Don't just get them to come over to give you markers and die. Because for a security guard, when they hear that they're wanted a situation, they don't commonly think that they're going to, you know, bring a strider or whatever. Or they don't think that they can't just fly in or drive around it and not get shot out. Because the majority of the time that security get requested, they're not given much detail and they do their own thing that they think. You know, they don't know what the situation is until they get there. And majority of the time, once they get there, they just die because they've been given terrible detail about what's happened. Give them detail.
User joined your channel.
On, tell them who it is, who they'll be declared on, what is there, what guns you think they have, and state that you think they have it if you don't know that they have it. And also, if security has assisted you with a situation, regardless of your success, if the security helped you, you just pay them out. Pay security for them to help you and they will continue to help you. If a security guard is on, or multiple security guards, ask them to help. Because when you get those markers, they're a portable MCU essentially. Be using security as a tool. They're very, very, very helpful. Especially if you're up against a large gang or whatever. Use them. Pay them out. Give them detail. Yeah. So as Hardy said, too many cops do request or ignore the request. The payments also don't all just come out of the places like the cops online. It comes out of their bank. The police bank pays for 50% of the payment, and then the rest is distributed from the police online. So you guys aren't losing much money. Most of the money you're losing is a payout that you get in 20 minutes time, which you'll just make back anyway. To pay them out.
In regards to that, they're like asking for payments like when we're really busy, like right inside the bank when we're trying to defuse. Like they run up and, can I get a payment for that
User
help?
joined your channel.
Like we're busy we're in combat and shit. They're trying to ask for payments.
Well, when you request them, you can tell them to request the payment after combat.
User joined your
has
channel.
Completely finished once you're back at PD or something like that. That when you request a security guard, give them, like I said, give them detail. Tell them when you're going to pay them, that you will pay them, so that they know that they're not coming just to get scammed, essentially. You know, it's their time that they're wasting.
Just another one about security. If they die in your presence and you can rev them, you should send them a text and let them know you're going to rev them. Otherwise, they're just sitting on a respawn screen wondering what to do, and they can't see law chat. So it's nice to text them if you see them die right next to you and either say, I'm dead too, I can't rev you, or I'm going to rev you, don't respawn.
Even vice versa, security can res cops as well, so...
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're the only one at bank or something and you can rev, but you don't want to send a text because you may get shot at, ask someone with an LR to do it. You don't always need to be the person communicating. Someone that isn't there can communicate for you. You just need to make sure that you tell them what exactly to say. Salami, you there?
Mm-hmm.
Response procedures.
Yep, so late last year, Bartender and I put a bunch of time and effort into writing these response procedures that is going to be in the link I'm putting in chat now. And we've noticed that it's as if no one's actually following these procedures a lot of the time or even know about them. I asked people on COP a couple nights ago if they knew what they were, and the channel was pretty much silent. Now, we haven't strictly enforced these procedures in the past, but from this point onwards, officers that are failing to follow these response procedures will face consequences, and this especially goes for officers that are in leading positions. It would probably take everyone here no more than 5 minutes to read through all of them, but the basic idea behind them is that when you're responding to situations that allow the use of armored vehicles, you should always be using these armored vehicles and not going in soft-skin vehicles. You should always be using drones when responding to situations, even hospital robberies. You don't want to learn this the hard way. And it's very important to not be dying during setup.
User was moved to your channel.
Another main thing is that when officers do push into situations, it seems to be as if they're going in one at a time, and this is just a quick and easy way to have the whole cop force picked off. You should be doing a coordinated push all at once and move in as a group. And also another big thing in this area is to utilize smokes during vehicle pushes. It's crazy effective, and it seems that the amount that it's happening is very low. Linksa has also made a thread, just another thing, not exactly on response procedures, but relevant. The link for that's in the chat as well now. And it's a bunch of posts that all cops are expected to read, and just like the response procedures, officers that are found to be going against what's written here may face consequences, as it is an expectation to familiarize yourself with these rules.
Just to touch on that, with my post as well, you'll see that all the past police meetings are there, and all those past police meetings have notes taken for them. That's why they're linked there. So take away what's been previously stated in past police meetings. If something is stated here that contradicts an older police meeting, go with what's stated in the newest meeting possible, aka today, or, you know, let's say their meeting a year ago has a contradiction from 6 months ago. Go with one that is newer. Because, like I said, rules change, but you all need to be reading the previous stuff that has happened, and everything in police discussions, or just in the police forum in general, is very valuable. Anything else, Salami?
No, that was pretty much it.
Alright, to touch on response procedures as well, just because it needs to be stated, people that just want to parachute in or drive in by themselves to get a quick defuse or something like that, just don't. It's stupid, you waste your life, you accomplish nothing if you die. If you defuse it, cool, good on you, but the majority of the time you're not going to. 90% of the time you will fail and you will die and you will waste your life, and especially if you're in a leading position and you're the person doing that, when you die the next time, those people online, they either need to have someone else lead, or they're just shooting in the dark essentially. They have they have nothing. They have no one to guide them at all. Declarations as well from cops. You guys need to be sirening when you're responding to situations, regardless of whether or not you've already sirened once. Like, let's say you respond to a checkpoint, you siren, and then you die and you come back on your second life, just siren again. Like, sirens are there to be used. Please siren, declaration, etc. needs to be done. Don't run into combat situations on foot as well. If you come down from sniping or whatever, don't sprint in, utilize armoured vehicles if you're allowed to. Don't just run into a meat grinder and get killed. There's no point. Like, think about the whole premise for this meeting is basically you guys need to be using your thought, your brain, think about what you're actually doing. A lot of time common sense is thrown out of the window because stuff is happening, If you're getting flustered while you're leading or while you're on cop, you know, if you're in a leading rank and you're getting flustered or you're getting annoyed, you need to either sit back and take a second to think about what you're doing instead of just getting annoyed by the fact that you're losing, or, you know, kind of don't deserve to be in that role if you get flustered heavily, because the leading ranks need to be able to lead when stuff is going on. Lately, a lot of stuff has been happening on Tanoa. Every rebel has been wanting to do everything that they can because there's a new skill line. Very fair. But you guys need to be able to lead when stuff is happening. Ace special? Anything?
Yeah, just in relation to lethal use, just a couple more points. So it was already stated about the close quarter combat, second life, doesn't mean just because you have a second life doesn't mean you have to as well. It's all, once again, common sense.
User joined your channel.
Martial law, this is the point that I wanted to bring up. Martial law does not necessarily mean that all rebels have to be killed. If he's just one guy and he's carrying a gun, you don't need to shoot him, you know what I mean? You can still stun and take him to jail. Every effort to stun and take someone to jail should be made. Doesn't matter what the state of the police force is like at the time. And then with lethal use, remember to switch back from lethals when you go to a different situation. If it happens once, you know what I mean? You go to a bank, you're on lethal, then you go to a checkpoint and you're still on lethal because you've got the switch. One time, that's fine. If it continues to happen, it just means you're being reckless and you're not actually checking your state, and it'll result in you being punished by the disciplinary team. That's it for
User
lethals.
was moved to your channel.
So for logging on and off of COP, those who join when there are low numbers facing large rebel activity, they may be given special promotion for... So senior sergeants and lieutenants, you should be using these time as an opportunity to prove your ability to lead. And for getting off COP, officers should be waiting till all active situations are dealt with before we get off, and avoid pestering your commanding officer until this has been achieved. Because this is particularly an issue with higher ranking officers logging off, because they're supposed to be setting the example, and if the highest ranking officer online logs off, a lot of the time everyone else is going to opt with as well, and you're going to see banks with like 2 people on, and rebels are just going to hold it, get large bags, whatever. And so for police interviews, no checks need to be done regardless of your rank. You need to contact a Mod Plus and make sure their profile is clean for whitelisting. Notes need to be clean for that sort of thing. Lieutenants should always be keeping an eye out for public officers who perform well and leave them +1. If possible, try and organise an interview. It's always good to see new officers on the force. While there is an expectation for lieutenants to be arranging interviews, just because a pub cop has reached 10 hours does not mean they're ready for whitelisting. Make sure you're looking for quality officers. If you are a lieutenant and you have not been added to the interview document, just contact one of us after a meeting and we'll add you right away. So also for communications, when you die, ensure that you communicate necessary information and be quiet. Don't go on and complain and say, "Oh, I got killed," blah blah blah, in the vids, whatever. Simple, irrelevant chatter in the police channel during response is not needed. Let the leading officers give instructions and speak only to convey important information. When you cannot break, especially, make sure there is no safe possibility for a revive before respawning. Because if you respawn, you're not coming back for another 15 minutes. And it happens often that officers just respawn, and when it can easily get a revive, an extra officer could mean winning or losing the situation.
Ask before you respawn, you mean?
Yeah, ask. Make 100% sure that you're not going to be able to get revved. But don't like beg for revs, don't keep on mentioning it. So when channels are split, ensure that you use law enforcement chat to convey information. This includes to patrol cops, like if you got killed out of town, you got wiped, patrol cops might just fly in there with hatchback sport and just get killed, because they didn't even know that there was a fight there. So just make sure you're talking to patrol officers as well. That includes security, as mentioned before. And if a pub cop is hot marking, don't just yell at them in group. That's probably doing more good than what it's doing more bad than what it solves. Yeah, and adding charges. Ensure that charges are not being stacked. Make sure you state in TS that you're adding the charge, because it happens a lot that charges get stacked, like you see multiple counts of possession, illegal weapon, all that. And charges can only be added if you've 100% confirmed that they've actually committed the crime. But cops must be adding charges regardless if a criminal has been caught or not. If you know that they've successfully gotten away from a bank, add the charge, but make sure you're 100% sure that they're actually there. That's all for me.
In relation to raiding, sergeants and senior sergeants need to be taking the initiative to lead a raid group. So whenever there's nothing going on or it's quiet and there's already a response team going to like a research or whatever, the rest of the force can have died or whatever, they can go to a gang hideout and do a raid, and that needs to be done probably every 60 to 90 minutes. You should be doing them.
Probably more frequent.
Yeah, very frequent. Constantly going around the map doing all the hideouts. Flix even said it. Take the initiative. If someone joined my channel and said, "Hey Flix, I'm going to start a raid," start raiding all the points, I'd love you. That's a direct quote from Flix. So, start doing the hideouts.
Yeah, you don't need to wait for a leading officer to ask you to do a raid. If you're the rank, do a raid. That's why sergeants have ability to do it.
Restrained civilians. When restrained civilians are, when you're a restrained civilian and you're being escorted by a cop, you're in God mode. So your care must be taken by the officer. So that means don't just escort them throughout combat, because when you get shot, you're gonna drop the guy, and then they're gonna keep spraying, and they're gonna kill you and the restrained civ, and it's gonna be reckless on your behalf. You got to be careful when you do that. Do not constantly drive around in a combat area with a restrained civ in your vehicle. If they spray and kill the civ in the vehicle, you're going to be charged the restrained civ bank balance that gets deducted from your account. Check your fire. So when you know there is a restrained cop, don't blindly fire. So that's cop shooting at a cop and a rebel who's taken a cop hostage. And yeah, cases
User
of
was
negligence
moved to
will
your
result in
channel.
officers paying the restrained civ amount. In relation to combat storing, wait till all civilians are processed before storing vehicles. When returning armored vehicles like Gorgons and Cashmans, ensure that you haven't been followed. Check your radar. Wait a minute. Don't go to the closest PD to the combat engagement. Go to one that's on the other side of the map. If you're in a Cashman or whatever, get away from the scene and make sure you weren't followed before you store. That's a quick way to avoid getting a combat store note on your profile. That also, yeah. Okay, now with a couple of other things, just not under any category, but just a couple of extras. When patrolling, cops need to be in every major city. Buddy up, go to a city and patrol. Don't all sit around at a PD and wait for something to happen. It doesn't take 10 people to process one person. If you finish the engagement, get on the transporter, go to a city and start patrolling. It's stuff like that involves that helps finding convoys and drug runs and all that type of shit. When instructing medics/mechanics, be specific when you text them. So don't just say no revives in a text message to a medic, because if there's 3 or 4 medics on and they're at different locations each, they don't know what the fuck's going on. They're not just going to stop all their duties because you've just said no revives. Be specific. No revives, GH1.
And hold on, just on top of that, if you're telling medics no revives and none of you guys are actually active at the situation, so if you're all at bank and you just send medics a message saying don't revive at bank, that's no. Medics can revive if you guys aren't there. They're not working against cops. You can't prevent them from doing their job when you're not there. You're not actively responding to a situation. They're not impeding your response. They're not harming you. You can't just prevent medics from doing their job because you say so. You need to actually be present on the situation. So don't get shitty if you guys all die and a medic goes in after you die. If you tell them to leave before you die, that's fine, but after the fact, if you've died and you say that, it's not the right thing.
I think that's it for me. Flix has a couple of things.
Nothing big really for me, but just the last couple of nights and over the weekend, like since Sanoa's been packed full of rebel activity, it's just been really good recently with the amount of like determination from cops to actually stay on, get stuff done, even though you're getting sometimes put through the rebel meat grinder and every checkpoint's going in CPE and whatnot, but even when that's always going, like people are keeping constant, they're maintaining a high standard, and been really good. Like even when it's like getting close to 11 p.m., 12 p.m., people are still like pushing properly, using smokes, and just playing really well. The other things I would say is recently, even when I take an MCU to the checkpoint or something, I'll often hear rebels be like, "Oh my god, you bring the MCU here and whatnot." You can use it. Don't be shy. You can even patrol around Tanoa or take it to bank or
User
hospital
joined your
robberies.
channel.
It's really good. It's mobile spawn point and free markers. Like you're not going to get roasted or anything if you lose it. Like it's there. It's meant to be used. If it gets blown up or even chopped, it's nothing too crazy as long as you didn't take it out for a silly reason, like by myself during martial law to a gas station. You're not going to have your head bitten off. It's a perfectly good tool, and there's nothing wrong with using it all. So just literally, if you can take that out, use it more. It's really handy. The only gripe I would have, well, it's not really a gripe, just a tip really. Whenever you're going into any sort of Zerg gang, as they say, up against them, usually when it comes to like research or bank or anything like that, plan ahead a little bit. Expect RPGs or expect pawnies or something. Maybe leave one or two guys back to get a cardman ready or a HMG, or just try a step ahead of the rebels, and just be wary of what you're doing, because as soon as you guys do faction raids or police convoy or something, I guarantee you someone will be driving a GCU out to Relics or something. So just be mindful of what you're doing. Use the MCU a bit more, but it's been picking up. Like everyone's been doing really well, especially with a lot of the new guys as well. I've been really happy with it. But yeah, that's about all I had to say really.
On top of the recent mentioning of GCUs, a lot of people have decided to fight GCUs when they're in the water. It's not always the wisest choice at all. You're far better off waiting for a GCU to surface, to go to the legal goods dealer to actually make a profit, and capture them while they're on land. So you can spike strip them, you can shoot their wheels out, you can disable them before they just get into water. A lot of people will decide to just drive a Gorgon into the water, or two Gorgons, or however many they think they need, and it's just gonna become a good old
3 hour grind.
You know, just things like that, you know. Think ahead. It's far more tactical to try and get a GCU while it's on land.
That can be difficult though.
You can
It
actually
can be-
use
it can be
a
very
Hellcat
difficult.
and off-road and shoot fuel darts from that, if
There's-
cops get around to doing that.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of things that can be done. It's not the easiest thing to take a GCU. I'm not saying it is the easiest thing at all. But you know, there's just doing what everyone else does isn't always the solution. You know, if you see someone go on the water with a GCU and you know for a fact that it's taken them hours to do so, try to think of a different way. The other night, a few cops used a submarine to try and push a GCU to the shoreline, and that actually worked. They ended up beaching a GCU with a submarine, and they got the people inside the GCU. You know, there's multiple things that you can do. On top of that, I think you're all familiar with Robinson Quinn. Yeah, cool, good. He's recently been made so that he doesn't count to the response numbers. So if there's 8 cops and he's online, then there will only be 7 counted. This doesn't mean he is exempt from the police response procedures. If there is an activity going on, he still needs to respond with you guys. You need to do the best of your ability to try and assist him. I'm not asking for everyone to stop what they're doing and type 10 minutes in chat to get him to understand you. It's fine if you don't want to do that. Yeah, communication issues. So, for those of you who don't know, he is partially deaf, mostly deaf. He doesn't really comprehend English extensively. He can understand basic stuff, so on and so forth. But it's not a reason to remove him from the force. He doesn't count numbers. Try your best to communicate with him. Type over law chat if you can. You don't need to. If you're responding to something and you're in the middle of combat, don't just prioritize typing. You know,
Be very simple with him. You gotta just say like Blue Pearl, Bank, Robertson, and he'll understand it quite well. He's actually quite effective.
Yeah.
So
you know,
Got us.
don't die because you're trying to communicate to him. You know, don't
No.
put all the blame on
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, he's
Got us.
actually
Prioritize yourself.
he actually talked to him and communicate with him well. He's actually a very effective officer. We had him with the hostage mission last night, where he actually went in really well and actually won a situation pretty much. So if you just take the time to help him, he's very well. He's very
today
well.
he looked after 3 guys we had arrested at the PD while we dealt with the jail. So he's actually a very useful person to be
There's
on
been a
top
few
of.
times where at night time he's popped into channels by himself with other people in the response channels. Try and include him in what you're doing. Like if he's in a channel by himself, you know, move him up or ask to move him up. He might not want to, whatever. Just include him in what you're doing because he, at the end of the day, he's still a whitelisted cop. He's not a pub cop. He's not a patrol cop. He is the equal rank, the equal position to all of you. He still
One
needs
thing.
to do exactly what all of you guys do. He's not
One-
exempt from anything.
Can he still add charges? He's good
Yes.
at adding charges now,
He-
so
he's-
you can
he's
ask him
never
to.
exempt.
One thing I have noticed during ops, sometimes officers will speak to him in quite of a rush volume, trying to just get it out so they're in combat. With Robinson, you do have to speak quite slow with him, just like slow pace, but he is a good officer.
Like, yeah, maybe if you just go word by word, he does understand it quite well.
On just
It's more
moving
effective
on-
over typing, guys.
Moving on from that, we'll discuss, you know, on top of the response procedures that were discussed earlier, I feel like a few things do need to be pointed out. The usage of drones has increased a little bit lately, but they're not really utilised much at all. A few officers, notably Rex and a few others, Jeffro I believe, have been using drones pretty much every single thing that they respond to. And, you know, most of the time that I've been on Rebel, and there's been a drone, let's say I'm at checkpoint 1, anytime a response has happened, I've just been sprayed at by a stun weapon from the bush in front of me, without even knowing they're there, because they've used a drone and seen where we are, and coordinated with the people driving in to actually get tasers like that. Very effective. It gives you a lot of information that you guys should be using. On top of that, responding to just general stuff, don't go in one by one, because you'll just get thinned out. Actually respond as a group. If you get asked to do something by your leading officer, do it if you can. If you cannot do it, give a reason, tell them why, and it's fine if you can't do something. A few days ago, or a few weeks ago, Flix asked a bunch of people to do something and it turned out no one even did anything. Or he asked them to respond to a checkpoint and they went in one by one and eventually just died. And that meant that Flix had to go there and lethal people because he was the only one that could respond. Things like that happen pretty frequently lately.
So, bring something up about patrol officers lately. A lot of people have been jumping on patrol officer. Just make sure you go over the rules. A lot of people have been asking questions. It's fair enough, but there is procedures in the actual F2 menu on patrol officers. Just someone brought out an armored vehicle the other day. Please go over your if you're gonna log on patrol cop, make sure you go over everything before you jump in that role. It's 50 hours of gameplay and a sergeant and above, I think, to play patrol officers.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
User joined your channel.
If I might add to that as well, there was an incident this morning where, I'm not going to name any names, they know who they were, was on patrol officer but wasn't in the channel. And they relayed that, you know, their reasoning for this was that a commissioner did it. And it's fine for, you know, we told him he wasn't allowed to do that, but, you know, if that is true, commissioners need to be setting examples. If they're on cop, they need to be in their channels.
There's a few, I'll cover this right now, there's a few reasons why some of the commissioners don't do that. Notably, if we're dealing with game issues and we're on patrol cop, we need to be communicating. Like if I'm on patrol cop, I'll jump down to our channel to talk with Hunter or a few
User
other
left your
admins
channel.
rather than get them to jump up to game issues to just simply give the presence that we're actually doing something. The majority of the time that we're not in those channels and we're playing, it's because we're discussing stuff with other admins or other staff members, which wouldn't be suitable for normal people that are playing cop to be listening to. We don't have public debates about rulings or anything in front of players because you guys don't need to be included on that. So majority of the time that a commissioner isn't in there playing probably has a very, very good reason as to not do it. But it doesn't mean that you're exempt from it. Rules are rules. It doesn't mean that you can be a smart ass and message us about it. If we're not there, we're not there probably for our own reason. But just because we might not be in that channel for whatever, you guys need to be in there.
Can I get some clarity on the KOS zone? If I pull my secret jet out and scan the map, am I allowed to fly around the KOS zone? And if I see a Bobcat doing a convoy, I'm allowed to assign a raid to go deal with that? Is that allowed? Or I'm not allowed to fly in the KOS zone at all?
You're not allowed to fly in the KOS zone. You can't be inside the KOS zone in a jet without raiding it.
If you're in a jet and you're flying around
Looks
outside
like
the
it was.
KOS zone, a lot of the time you can detect stuff whilst you're outside, and you'll detect a Bobcat which is armed, which avoids raid rules. So that's my loophole.
When you're in a jet, let's say you're flying around the main island. If you clip a hideout or something, if you accidentally fly over one, don't freak out, but you shouldn't be aiming to do that. Because you're in a jet, it's really fast, it's hard to avoid something that's coming up like that close to small as area that you're flying into, but avoid raid areas, you can't fly through.
I'm just not, with the whole KOS zone, there's a illegal relics there as well, so,
It's still the same raid rules, it's a KOS zone, still follows the same...
Can't we
rules
change
as
the
a
rules
hideout.
for the jets, or no?
No,
'Cause
it's still the same. It'd be the same as helicopters, it'd be the same as everything else. Just because you're in a jet doesn't exempt you from raid rules.
Oh, okay.
It's never going to be a thing. Someone just linked a good drone tutorial. On top of that, you guys can actually... How many of you guys know that you have two side panels, two GPS views? You have your left and right GPS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can assign your drone view to your left GPS and your GPS, like your actual map view, to your right GPS, so you can see what your drone sees while you're actually playing. So a lot of that needs to be done. There's a lot of neat armor tricks that, not many people know about.
If I can add to useful drone tricks, if you bind the stabilized camera key in your key bindings, you bind that to a particular key. You can use it in jets. You can also use it on drones. You lock onto a person with the camera, and it'll track that person. You can have that up on your drone cam on your left, and if you're following someone through a forest, you can't lose them. They will not. The drone will stay on him. So, extremely useful. If you don't have a dog handler, you can watch that person. So I'd highly recommend that, especially if someone's running for a forest. Lock the camera on them.
What key?
So
I don't think
it's a key
I don't
binding.
think it has a default one. You've got to set it, I think.
But it's under weapons
It's
and it's
under
stabilized turret.
Yeah, that's the same with the next target and vehicle. That's something that a lot of people should have bind if they're going to be in anything like a casual or anything with a radar. It's hella useful. It means you can just scan through targets very quickly.
With what Son has said about
User was moved
Patrol
to your
Cop,
channel.
if you guys are on Patrol Cop, just in case some of you guys didn't read it, and you see response dying, jump over to response and help them. Just because you're on patrol doesn't mean you don't need to help.
I'm a trainer too.
Especially trainer, especially if you're a leading rank, go help the people that need help if you're already on cop. Or if you notice, like Special said, if you notice stuff is going on and you're a leading officer, sergeant, senior sergeant, lieutenant, hop on and try your best. That's when you're going to get most noticed, rather than playing at night time at 3 PM or 3 AM, whatever, and nothing much happening. On top of Patrol Cop, there's that thread there, which just basically states you're all entitled to play it, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. Don't use Patrol Cop as a way to pass your quests. Don't use Patrol Cop as a way to pass your quests or advance your skill line or whatever. On top of that, when you're playing cop, if something is happening, don't just think about your quest, don't be greedy. You can do your quest at any other time. Like, finish whatever you're doing, complete the response that you're doing, or die, or whatever the situation is, but don't just go, I need a defuse, and run into a bank and die and try to get a defuse. It's just stupid. Like, if you tase everyone that's there, coordinate with whoever, state that, you know, once the situation is done, ask if you can defuse it for a quest. I'm sure everyone will speak up.
One big thing, excuse the power tools, is processing. I don't know if it's been mentioned. I'm going to hear it all with these power tools going, but processing. If a Fort Knox goes off, say, and you're coming back from a bank with 4 or 5 criminals, obviously you guys are going to want to individually do those guys so everyone gets a stat. But it's actually a lot better to just designate 4 of those dudes to one guy. Yep, he gets lucky, and then you get a good full response going to research. So it's not just like 5 or 5 minutes delayed because you've basically wanted to process this dude, and 4 guys are still just held up processing. I see it all the time, and it's just ridiculous. You know, it gets down to the point where you just need to say, boom, this guy, you take all 4, you process them. All right, let's go.
On top of that, if you're processing and situations are happening that you need to go and respond to, you can cut the RP, you can do minimal RP and just send them to jail. Pull their ID, like ask them for their ID. If they don't respond, and just barcode, etc. You're not at that point required to talk about how you went to the beach yesterday and how fabulous it was.
You just generally
process
say
them.
Shoot him with the stun rifle.
Got stuff to
blood
do.
Test, walk around
I've got
the
an
computer.
important thing to do, and then you just say, I've got to go, sorry, you've got to make this quick.
Yeah.
They'll understand.
If rebels are arguing with you when you're processing them, don't waste your time with them. If they're complaining about you doing something wrong or telling you that you need to release them or whatever else people will come up with, process them like you normally would. Tell them to go to game issues. At that point, if they're screaming at you, then they're most likely breaking RP. So just process them like normal and send them. Don't waste your time with people.
One thing that got mentioned before, but I think people went over it. It was the response to a hospital checkpoint. If a hospital and a checkpoint pop, it's already a priority order every time. You know, you go to the hospital. The checkpoint has a longer timer. The hospital doesn't. That's why you always respond to the hospital. The only time you would ever respond to a checkpoint over a hospital is if the hospital popped ages ago, and then the checkpoint's been going on for a while, and you think it's a hit and run. If the hospital pops a second time though, they're camping it or whatever. You'd go back and you'd go to the hospital anyway. But other than that, it's always the hospital. You've got to go to the hospital. These long ass pushes to a checkpoint and someone gets 100 chemicals from a hospital is not okay.
Do any other leading officers have anything to say?
Just when people are tasing people at situations, if you've tased and restrained someone, get them in a vehicle and get them out of there as quick as you can. I've noticed a lot of officers sort of just stand around trying to get another person. You're trying to be a hero. It's not going to work. If you can pull that person out of that situation, you're actually going to screw over that rebel gang because they're going to either decide to leave that situation and go follow you to the police station, or, you know, so it's a better option to just grab that person and get them straight out of there.
Just in case a few people don't know, but the response procedures got changed about 2 months ago. During martial law, you can only respond to certain areas with an armed air vehicle. That's stated under the usage of... Actually, it's stated under martial law, I believe. You can't just go around with an armed air vehicle during martial law strafing whoever you see armed. You can only use it at banks, fort, etc. High priority crimes. It states on the map screen.
And with that, is there any way that we can get that change in the J menu? Because a lot of people use that as a quick point of reference, and it still is listed as they can be just used.
Bug report it next time you're in game. Yeah.
Okay.
With the Hardcourt Hospital, I've noticed it takes a long time to respond to that. Can we get a garage spawn or something like that to respond to that?
Maybe update Dude Still to be an actual car garage as well.
It is. There's also another one.
You can only pull
the
boats
Dude
out of
Still
Dude
one's
Still.
just boats, and they're really.
When was the last time you tried?
Yesterday afternoon.
It should be right now.
Okay.
Yeah, as Clicker said, there's 2 of them. There's another one on the other side of the hospital, closer to Fort Knox.
Okay.
cool.
You can't actually process at those PDs if you didn't know. It's only just for responding. You have to take them to a proper PD to process.
Now, I believe everything has
User
been
joined your
mentioned.
channel.
People.
Wait, sorry.
Go on.
One more thing. Yeah, no
User
nossing
joined your
into,
channel.
Jail. Going off a hill and nossing into jail and knocking someone over. Would have to get every cop out of there and then restart the engagement. It will get you punished. Don't noss into jail.
Also, as cops, just on that subject, if you're jumping over something and you need to vault to get over it, or do any like spin your camera around or anything, you're not doing it legitimately. If you start floating on an object and you vault or something to get over it, you can't do that.
Yeah, if you
At that
float
point,
or
you're
vault, it's
through it.
glitching.
So do we just log out?
No. Most of the time that you start floating, you get put back where you came from.
Yeah, the only
By
time that
default.
won't happen is if you press V to try and counteract it.
And if you actually glitch through and you know you've glitched through, just go back to where you jumped from and go and just not do it. Pretty much. Like if you glitch into a H barrier and you realize you've glitched into it, go back to where you've jumped from. Don't just go, okay, I've done it now. Just keep playing. Just you got to go back from where you started. Then it's
Yeah,
really
I've
tough
done
when
that
people glitch,
research.
realize
I've
that
gone for
glitch,
that
and then
building
keep
by
playing.
accident, so I've run all the way back around again.
You see, sometimes though you'll glitch through a wall by accident or something, like I've done at jail a few times.
research
has
happened a couple of times. Has
And
that
then
research been fixed actually? Sorry.
If you glitch through a wall, you glitch through a wall. Just let the people know that it happens.
Yeah, okay. Because they'll still kill you, and you try and reset, but it's too late.
I mean, if it happens and you get shot at, do what you can to survive. But you know, you still put yourself in that position to begin with.
Yeah,
You're
true.
responsible. Alright, any other officers want to bring up concerns that may have not been mentioned?
These pub cops, we should start unlocking them a bit more and get more trainers on. I don't think there's been a real lack in watching these pub cops and training them. I think they're just sort of doing their own things and pulling out armoured vehicles, which is fair enough. They're allowed to pull out armoured vehicles, apparently. So, but we can train them and guide them a bit better than letting them do what they want.
Just before we go off on a tangent with all the questions, if you are not in the police discussions or the leadership forums, I know a lot of you guys that are leadership ranks aren't actually there. Ask NoLegs or Flix to add you, and before you even consider asking them, grab your profile URL or your forum account URL and send it to them to speed up the process, so that they don't need to go and guess your name if your name isn't what you have on TeamSpeak.
What ranks would you consider as a leadership rank and above?
Lieutenants. I believe Super's actually for that rank. I think it's
Okay.
Super.
Just
For
a
the
question.
forum one, I think it's Super.
Just a question with the new armored vehicles. So I've been told by that many cops that you can, you can't, you have to ask. So what is the deal
what
with
new
it?
armored vehicles?
The
tanks?
armored vehicles. No, the new armored vehicles that like you can pull if you're not the rank, like from the quest system.
Oh, they're not new, man. That's just armored vehicle rule in general. It's the same guideline as all the other procedures. If you can pull a hunter, you can only use those vehicles to respond to that certain crime that warrants it. You can't use a hunter to respond to a
If
gas
it's in your garage, you're allowed to use it.
Yeah.
If it's within the rules. Yeah.
If you don't
Yeah,
follow
right.
the rule, your vehicle will be removed. Same, I'll reiterate earlier, just so that's fresh in everyone's mind, if you're not using the proper weapons or the appropriate weapons for close quarter combat, you will be put on a weapon ban for a week to begin with.
Can I quickly mention something?
Yep.
Yeah, as well, if you're like if you get demoted like me, which is very sad, make sure you like remove the vehicles that you had in the like the rank you were previously at, otherwise you will get in a lot of trouble.
And clean out your locker as well of anything that you
Yeah.
previously had.
Yeah, just talking from experience.
One thing I want to mention as well. There's been a lot of times where there's high ranks not helping us out if we're getting pummeled by rebels. It doesn't necessarily need to be high ranks as well. It can be cadets or anything. If you can come help us out, jump in and give us a hand, because it's not very fun when you're getting pounded by rebels. So that can be cadets or anything really. If you can come give us a hand, it'd be much appreciated.
On that subject, kind of not on the subject, but if you guys have armed air vehicles that you're fighting, this happened a lot with me. A lot of the time when I was up in the Blackfoot, people would pull the Cashman out from the main island, which is where we were. Go to Lynnhaven or something else. Get out a Cashman from a faraway PD. Gain altitude.
Go to the opposite side of the map, yeah.
Yeah, gain altitude, most importantly, before you even consider trying to combat anything. You're not going to shoot down a Pawnee or a Blackfoot from 600 meters. You're most likely going to end up getting either shot at and flying away or doing something stupid. Literally, play altitude, you'll decimate anyone that's below you. Utilize your radar. Don't always have your Cashman radar on as well if you're versing a Blackfoot, because they'll get notified of it further away, because radar pings happen. You know, flick your radar when you think you're near them, or when you need it, so on and so forth. You know, learn how radar works if you're going to be using the Cashman or the Blackfoot. Doesn't mean that you can't use it if you don't know how it works, but, you know, just...
Utilize the airband, because the...
Utilize the MCU
MCU, because that will put 10 kilometer markers, or whatever it is.
If you call an airband, try get the MCU up so that you always know where those air vehicles are. 10 kilometers, it literally goes down to Lynnhaven, on Tanah. It's a large radius, and you'll always know where that air vehicle is and exactly what altitude they have.
And another thing with the Cashmans and Blackfoots, if you're getting wrecked by a single Blackfoot, don't be scared to pull out more than one Cashman. Just
take like 3.
Get like 4 in the air.
That's your best option.
If you feel the need to get as many as you want, do it. The more the better, because you can just come from 4 different angles and just make them miss all their shots and destroy them.
A Blackfoot's not going to focus on 3 targets. On
Can
top
I
of that, hold up, don't respond to a Rebel Blackfoot or Cashman with a Pawnee. Or a Hellcat. There's no point unless you're very, very, very competent. Because you're just going to get shot down. It's a waste of your life. You having a lie there. Unless they move, you're not going to be able to chase them again.
I was going to point about the 6.5 Pawnees and operations and such. So, I've seen a few times, like for example, at a Tanah research, there would be a 6.5 Pawnee up defending the operation. Just because someone pulls a Khanjan out to go and get it, doesn't mean the rest of the cops need to, you know, pull out like Pawnees to back it up. If you've got a Khanjan for one Pawnee, that's fair enough, but we need more ground units. We don't need to have like 3 Pawnees going after it, because the Khanjan will do the job. That's not an excuse.
On top of that, if a lot of you guys won't be the best in Pawnees, but you know, it's fine. Use it at your own leisure, learn what you need to learn. But if you're not fully competent, the best tactic you guys have is to bait away whatever you're attacking. Don't just try dogfight it, just be a nuisance. Be an annoying fuck. Like, literally annoy the shit out of whoever you're fighting. Just strafe them once, fly off. It diverts their attention from whatever they're protecting. If they start strafing, you can just strafe them while they're strafing. There's so much you can do to be a nuisance to whoever you're attacking. If you're not completely competent, just do whatever you can to annoy them. Don't just, you know, get shot out trying to strafe someone. Just be annoying. Do that with the Cashman as well. If there's a Cashman up and there's only one Pawnee, the rest of you guys should be responding while the Cashman diverts their attention. There should always be a response happening regardless of an air vehicle. Like, I never like hearing the excuse that, oh, they have an air vehicle, we can't do anything. It's not true.
Linkso, could you address the martial law decking? I noticed this map is a lot crampier than the other map, and martial law seems to come around a lot quicker than usual. I don't really want the cops to chain fucking declare martial law, but what's your thoughts on that?
Martial law is fine, but it's not something that just because you can declare it, you should declare it. You need to think a lot about what you're going to do for the next hour that you are literally probably going to get shit on for. When you declare martial law, anyone with a gun can kill you. They can get in a Pawnee, they can strafe you anywhere. Because you declare it, rebels can literally quite literally team indirectly against you guys. They don't need to attack each other just because they're strafing cops. You guys are going to get shit on by multiple gangs if you declare martial law and you don't have the competent leaders on, or you don't have multiple leaders, I should say, to be able to handle the situation.
And on that, before decking marshal, you should always talk to your officers about your funds, what vehicles you have stocked up, what you have, how many of you are, and what you can continuously pull out. Because you don't deck unless you got the funds to deck.
I just
if you're the leading officer and you feel that you want martial law, like Kirkus said, not everyone online might want it. You know, it's a group decision at that point. Everyone needs to be opted for it. Not one person can not want martial law. You all
Well,
need to be
I
willing to
just
do it.
been like recently, like I felt it was justified to call it, and as soon as I've called it, I've been messaged by other players. Oh, what are you calling the blah blah blah? I've been like ripped
Not that
into.
concerned. Yeah.
I've just ignored them anyway.
Are they
but-
people off cop that are messaging?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
Well, they
Yeah, they
shouldn't be
they
messaging
shouldn't.
people who are on cop. So regardless of what's happening, if they're messaging you during cop, just take it straight to game issues.
There is a forum, basically a forum rule, but we'll call it a rule that rebels can't just message cops. Something that is non-RP. That is non-RP. Also, on top of that, if rebels can't message you guys as cops, you guys can't message bait responses to rebels. You know, if a rebel can't tell you something, it doesn't mean that you can tell them and, you know, rile them up and annoy them. Don't
Yeah,
do that.
if
'Cause
someone's done-
it's a double-ended sword.
What if they're done a poor deck? Is it just
Oh, yeah,
admin?
if they've done a poor deck, like, give me an example, because...
Well,
it's very-
Nick Bell, love you, Nick Bell. He decked on jail, and I messaged him. All right, well then cops aren't going to come within 100 meters of jail. You can't shoot us. He didn't put 1.5 or anything. Like, it was a pretty poor deck. So I just messaged him back saying it. We'll go 100 meters out. You can't shoot us.
Down redecked, yeah.
I mean, if you guys go 100 meters, you can't responding, but yeah, you should... Rebels in general should be aware of the declarations they send and make sure that they're valid.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
I was just saying, if a rebel's going to send a deck that it makes it very easy for you to get around it without any combat or anything stupid, just see if it follows. Like, there was a time on Altus where someone told us to put our hands up PD, everyone did it, he got mad and told us to just go about our business. It stopped combat, and it meant that we could just get along our lives a lot quicker instead of having to deal with some guy sniping from like 3Ks out.
Alex, here you go. Oh, okay. So, with messaging rebels, don't just if they've done something stupid, that you've done something stupid, they message you, just ignore them, or don't, and you'll message them. Just don't even bother about it. There's no point. Just take it to game issues instead of arguing over in-game messages. It's just so much harder for the cop force. It's happening way too much, and it was maybe broken a rule, and then cops all just start messaging him. It's just, well, there's no point. Just wait until take it to game issues, you know. That's my take on that.
On top of what Cody said, yes, that may be a poor declaration, but it doesn't mean that you just ignore the fact that they've declared on you. If it is a poor declaration, you carry out the situation, being that just hands up or die, carry out the situation, or you comply with the deck and you deal with the game issue after the fact. You don't just stop combat that is occurring because you think somebody may be poor. Finish it, go to game issues. You can always be compensated for whatever you lose during that. The only thing we can't compensate for is time, but unfortunately, when you're playing cop, you don't really have time for everything.
User
So
entered
they
your
still
channel.
need a role player reason for their deck, so just
Preferably, yeah, but it doesn't mean that you just instantly think that that deck is null and void and don't do anything about it. When an invalid deck is sent and they're brought up to game issues after the fact, they'll be
User in your channel
sent
timed
the
out.
declaration rules, and they'll be told that their declarations need to have some form of valid RP reason, etc., etc., and they'll be talked to by a staff member in that regard. That's the only way that a new player or someone that sends invalid decks is going to learn.
Clicker raised the point in the chat. He's basically talking about relation with the PD to the op. So Bank as well. Bank is very close to Blue Pearl. It's within 1.5. So you have to make sure combat's out before you store anything, or even just people in the area. You got to be careful when you do stuff like that.
Something related to the keeping an eye on things. If you get into a combat with what you think is just a random group of people in a town, try and tell your people, because there was an incident a while ago, but it still happened, where 3 Gorgons got blown up because people were camping a PD that we didn't know that were decked on it. because they decked on us in the city nearby, and then knew that we're coming with Gorgons, so sat at the PED gates with RPGs, blew us all up, and we died. Lost 3 Gorgons, wasn't funny.
Wait, so is jumping on top of a dome like glitching?
Yeah, well, you got a glitch to get up on top of it, pretty much.
As long as you don't float, click V, or do anything that we talked about earlier.
There
You
are
float
a
up,
few
like-
positions. There are a few positions where you can get up a dome just by walking up, but majority of the time you do need to levitate up the side of it or float up it some way or the other. There is one dome at research, I believe, that you can get on legitimately if you land up there. And also,
Or use a
just
ladder.
because someone's on a dome doesn't mean that they've always glitched up there.
Oh my
someone
god,
could
they can
drop
give
them.
me shoes.
Yeah. And real quick, guys, we're in a police meeting. We're not in game issues. We're not here to point fingers when something gets said that contradicts another officer's actions.
Amen.
That's just poor as fuck. It's really the wrong place to do it. We're not here to judge the way people respond. We're here to clear up issues and tell people this is how we want them to respond. Don't come in here and use something that has been said to attack someone else. It's just petty. If you have an issue with an officer, wait till the situation is done, go to game issues, get a commissioner that isn't involved in the situation to discuss it with you. Don't wait till a police meeting to divert or have your little rant about it. It's just poor. Right, any other concerns that haven't been mentioned yet? Because we're about to wrap up in a second.
Yeah, just one thing. I do want to put out there. I've noticed when I've been playing on Civ recently, there was a couple of high-ranking nons, about three cops, and SEC responded to jail. I checked on it, and they all came in vans, helicopters, and a hatchback. And there was only me there, so they've basically underestimated. They shouldn't be underestimating what's going on. I was the only guy out there, and I've basically wiped all cop force that was there, except for one that was able to get in. But responding in hatchback vans or helis to a jail where you can take armored vehicles where you most likely would have gotten me, you got to think about that stuff.
Just reiterating what Salami has said for you, Nick Bell. Every cop in here and every cop that is whitelisted should be reading the response procedures. If you guys are not reading anything on those police discussions, you're doing something wrong. If you cannot view the police discussions, like I said before, message No Leisure Flicks, your forum URL, and ask to be added. And, you know, wait patiently. If you've already asked once, don't spam them because it's not going to happen. We have a lot of other stuff to do. The response procedures are there. Everyone needs to read over them, as well as the procedures in the map. Things that are noted on the forums, if they seem outdated to you, go by whatever's on the map screen. Not everything will always be updated on the forums immediately. If you notice that something is not correct on the forums, let us know, we'll fix it. Don't just, you know, go, oh, I've seen this on the forum, so I'm going to do this, but the in-game rules contradict it. Go by the in-game rules. Cadets getting no more hunters. What? Oh, yeah, that's their own
That's just
loss.
unlucky, yeah.
Yeah, that's their loss. They get it once from the skill menu. If they can't buy it again because they're not the rank, then that's their fault. They need to value the vehicles that they have. The vehicles are still locked behind sergeants being able to purchase them, or senior constables being able to purchase Ifrits. The only reason they get it is from a skill reward, and that's it.
Just
Every cop is
allow
entitled to that.
just if you're higher ups online like myself, just let me pull out the vehicle for you. Got plenty of money, and I can handle losing one car.
As a higher up, if you have money, you should be getting everyone ready to respond to something. You should be pulling out all the vehicles for however many you think. You should be telling people to get in the vehicles and going. There shouldn't be a case of, oh, you're pulling out this vehicle, oh yeah, okay, I'll pull this, and then you spend 5 minutes circle jerking over who's going to pull out a vehicle.
Yeah.
Just, if you're the leader,
Even
pull out vehicles.
Even if
What
it's
about-
lower rank and the higher rank doesn't have any money, dish him some money so he can get out some armored vehicles for you.
When you're on cop, your money isn't just your money, it's everyone's money. Share your money around. Value the fact that you all need to communicate and work
What about?
together. What about what?
I was gonna say faction raids. Like people really do them. That's like
Yeah, we've
only way
stopped
of
a lot
cops-
lately.
Probably because they don't have much time to do them and stuff just like normal raids. If you guys just follow the priority order. What I said earlier, whoever was asking about it earlier, what Ace said about raids is to happen when there isn't much going on the map. Raids are raids, but they don't prioritize over bank or something like that. So do them when you can. If you guys have nothing going on, like not just nothing going on as in you've just defused something, if you have nothing going on at all on the map for about 15 to 20 minutes, that implies hideouts have been recently raided. Then do a faction raid if you have the appropriate numbers. Remember that when you do a faction raid once and you fail, you can't raid it for the rest of the day. Not just the restart, but the rest of the day. So you need to prioritize when you do your faction raids.
Just don't fuck
User
them up pretty
disconnected
much.
from your channel.
Yeah. With the responding, I think Nick Bell, you mentioned it, how people responded to you in vans.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys need to use armored vehicles for the responses where you're allowed to. And on top of that, if there's 16 cops on and only one hospital pops up, not all 16 cops need to go to the hospital. Or all 12 cops, or all 10 cops, you know? Use a drone before you respond, see who's there. If it's one guy, don't just have 10 striders roll in on the poor guy and shit on him. You know, just take 2 striders, 3 striders, tase him, get out there, have the other cops patrolling.
Yeah, he's not gonna have a very fun time in the server if he's gonna get steamrolled by cops. As for the vehicle thing before too, pulling them out, another thing is to communicate with each other, because there's been a couple of times like 2 or 3 officers are all pulling out vehicles at the same time and they all blow up and everyone dies. So you need to make sure that there's only one person pulling out at a time. So you just got to communicate with that.
And like, if you're doing a raid on crafting and a bank starts, don't all sit at crafting, like 1 or 2 officers stay, rest go to bank.
Yeah. The faction raids fall under the raiding priority. So just because you're raiding a faction, it doesn't put it above anything else. It's still just a normal raid. Same for KOS, same if you're hunting a Bobcat, same if you're going for a GCU at Relics. Something else comes up on priority, you need to go.
And saying that doesn't mean that if you are a rebel and you notice a cop doing it, you do not message them and say, well, you've got this to respond to, etc., etc. You don't always know the backstory of what's going on cop.
Alright, I think we'll end it here. Anyone that has notes will be posting them. I'll be posting notes up on the forum on the police topic about this. Whoever's recording, if you want to upload and send it to me later, feel free to. I'll definitely include it.
Hi, YouTube.
Yeah, like I said, we'll end it right now. So